Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Cash Flow Positive. I am your host, Kenny Bedwell. And today, forget the macro trends, forget the macro market, why you should focus on you. And so that is why I have brought in Fouad, who comes from a consulting background. Fouad he's been working or worked in the past, I should say, for about 20 years consulting banks. He's going to tell us a little bit about that experience, but more importantly, about his portfolio and how he scaled it to over $18 million and now just bought a co-hosting business of 62 properties and is doing a lot. He's doing multiple things. He's going to tell you how he's doing that. And he has a family of 3. This man does it all, and he's in impeccable shape if you're not watching this live. So all these secrets he's going to drop for us. I am super excited. Fouad, tell us more about yourself. Take it away.
Yeah. So, coming up in the banking space, having been a numbers guy my whole life, one of the things we were really big on setting goals in our house, right? So 21 years in the banking space, consulting other banks. And I loved my job. I loved my corporate role. Frankly, it was a lot of fun. I spent 80% of my time like on the golf courses and in baseball stadiums with the C-suite of other banks, right? But after a while, when we were having our 3rd kid, it was like I needed to get off the road. I was traveling 12 to 15 weeks out of the year. I really needed to be home. And so my wife at the time, she started a law firm. God, it was like, I left the banking industry in 2019. So it was like we were 8 years into her law firm practice at that time. And it just hockey sticked at that point. All of our financial goals were ahead of us. And it was like, okay, cool. We just hit them all with her hockey stick. And so it was like, my corporate role could transition into now a more variable. I could begin my entrepreneurial journey. I left banking, got into real estate investing. I was a long-term renting investor. And I hated that. I was not a good landlord. I tell the story all the time that I was the guy that if you couldn't afford rent payment, I was like your golden landlord because you could just call me and tell me, hey, we can't afford this.
Yeah.
And I would just let you stay as long as you could because I didn't have it in my heart to kick anybody out.
Right.
Got rid of all those. And then we got into the short-term rental space. And this was now Thanksgiving of 2021 was the first guest that we owned. We hosted. We bought a house in Huntington Beach. We bought 2 in Scottsdale. So we went from 0 to 3. And then I hired a real estate mentor. And he started teaching me everything I needed to know about real estate. And he said something that really resonated to me. It's really easy in real estate to run out of your own money, but you can't run out of other people's money. And as a former finance guy, banker, all that, that really resonated with me. And I started understanding like, okay, I can go raise capital. I don't have to use any of my own funds anymore. And I can still do real estate deals all day long. So, the focus was still real estate for me. It was, how do we offset all of our taxes? How do we grow our generational wealth? How do we build assets and do all that? So I started just raising capital. And we got to 9 that we own now, and we're building number 10 as we speak. And that's where we're at today. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, we third party manage and we do all that for others as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, before we started the episode, I mean, you were telling me about the co-hosting business. I don't know if that's public, but
yeah, no, we can talk.
I'm like, right. I just spoiled some news or whatever, but yeah, sorry.
So. Well, I imagine this isn't going to be posted for about a week or 2. So by then we should have our operating agreement signed and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, you'll be good to go. Okay, yeah, sure. And we don't have to say who or what or anything, but you acquired a co-hosting business as well as on top of these, 9/10 short-term rentals that you've done. Tell everybody where are these properties, 9 or 10 properties? Are they throughout the United States still, or is it just Scottsdale? Or tell us what markets they're in.
Yep. So we sold our California property. We've got 6 in Scottsdale. We've got 2 in Kissimmee. We got 7 in Scottsdale, and 2 in Kissimmee. Getting ready, actually, to probably sell the Kissimmee ones. Just not a fun market. We could do a whole episode on that market if you want
to. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm curious. We got to know. So is it just uber competitive? Is it just bad guests? Like, tell me your thoughts on.
I would say it's mainly 2 things. I would say it's bad guests, and I would say it's infrastructure, right? So like your servicing team, the housekeeping, the maintenance, all of that. The housekeeping team, there are over, the exact number, but I think it's 50,000 plus short-term rentals in Kissimmee. They're volume-based. They are just like, hurry up, get in, get out. Your housekeeping is doing the bare minimum just to prep the house. And what I learned, being a luxury guy, all of our homes are very luxurious. We put really nice touches, really nice furnishings. We go all the way. What I learned is the market is not there for it in Kissimmee. The people that are willing to spend all the money there are staying at the Disney resorts. And it's really hard to compete with those resorts, right? They want the whole entire experience. So do we get lucky here and there? I mean, we've got a pretty unique property because we got two homes next door to each other there, a 12 bedroom, 12 bathroom, and a 9 bedroom, 9 bathroom. So
Mhm.
when we're lucky enough to host somebody that occupies both properties, those are great guests. I mean, we've had like 7-time Mr. Olympia there. We've had the Brazilian president. We've hosted some really, really cool stuff. But when they're individually rented, it's generally not our type of guests that we like to host.
Sure, sure. That's really interesting you said that because I'm planning or actually hired a travel agent for this time around to see how that goes. But we go to Disney World every year for my daughter. She loves Disney. We're like, hey, what do you want to do for your birthday? She's just always like, go to Disney World. And we're like, okay. So and it's January and we live in Buffalo, so you know how that is being from Michigan. Like you get away. So we're going to Disney World and we normally stay in Airbnbs. It's just like, oh, the thing, like, oh, I stay in Airbnbs, like I'm Kenny, I need to stay in Airbnbs. But this time I'm like, you know what? Like, I hate driving to Disney World. Like, I got to rent a car. There's too much construction in Orlando. And it's just, it takes like 30 minutes, even though we could like be in one of the resorts that are nearby because of all the traffic and stuff. So I'm like, let's just stay in the resort. And our friends stayed in the resort last year and they were at the park and they could stay longer and do more. And we're just like, it was just too stressful, like trying to stay away from the resort. So we're gonna like lean into that. But I think there's something there. What you just said is like people are wanting to stay at the resorts and experience all that, and not deal with the headaches. So that's really interesting. So now 7 in Scottsdale. I mean, I like from my data and my insights. I think I've talked to you about this a while ago. Like Scottsdale is a quote unquote saturated market, right? So you guys you're doubling down there. What is working for you guys in a market like that? Why are you
Yeah.
doubling down there?
First thing I want to address there is the saturation statement, right? So, I always, when I hear the word saturation, it doesn't mean that you can't enter the market. It means you're going to have to work a little harder to differentiate yourself, right? There's a reason brand new restaurants still go into downtown Chicago and open up. There's a reason that clothing retailers still come to New York City and open up, right? The saturation is only in the sense that don't just come here and be basic, because then yes, you're going to enter a price war. But when you come and differentiate yourself, so that's one thing. We differentiate ourselves with amenities and service and all the other things. But on top of that, and one of the things that I'm really heavy on in the short term rental space, what I find most people make the mistake of is they think as a short term operator before they think as a real estate investor.
Mm.
And so, as a real estate investor, as a prudent real estate investor, what I know is I look for 3 KPIs that tell me what I need to know about the strength of my asset purchase. Those 3 KPIs are population growth, job growth, and wage growth. When you have those 3 things in alignment in a market, you have really good data that shows that you're going to have stronger than average appreciation in that place, right? And so if you do try to launch short-term rentals and they flop, you're really well protected there by those 3 KPIs. So we are buying really old homes, we're tearing them down, and we're rebuilding homes. So we're creating so much equity in our acquisition that when we're done, we're refinancing essentially the Burr model. But we're just doing it with a build instead of a flip. And so on the back end, we're refinancing, we're getting all of our money out. So we don't actually have any money in the deals. So these types of deals, I mean, obviously we'd love cash flow when we want cash flow, but what we find is that we cash flow these deals maybe 4 or 5 months out of the year, and the rest of the year, they pretty much break even. So, we make a little bit of cash. We have no money in the deal. We have an asset that's paying for itself 12 months out of the year. And so we have, technically speaking, those are infinite cash flows just because we have no money in the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's our real estate asset. Now, that's not sustainable just from a cash flow side. So depending on what your goals are, if your goal is you don't really care about the asset management, the asset building side, you're not looking for tax benefits from cost segregation studies, all that. If you're just strictly on the cash flow side, that model would not work for you, especially in Scottsdale, probably. And also, we knew that, and that's why we went into third-party management. And I bought the co-hosting company, as you alluded to. We've got 62 listings that we're bringing in house right now. and I get to keep the owner of that company on my team, who is, as a partner in our new business. That, she's a gem of a human. She's a great operator, loves the day to day. I don't. I want to focus on more visionary things like marketing and finance, and scaling the business, and building it to sell it. Right. So
Yeah.
that's the focus. So
That's interesting. So you are truly diversifying your investments, your business across multiple different avenues. I talked about I did an episode, I think it was last week or the week before. I don't know. I batch these things together and then they come out.
for
So
sure.
whatever. I think it came out last week or the week before. But long story short, I talked about like fast money, medium money, slow money, and it's like, what's fast money? How do we get fast money? And then what benefits do we get from that? And then what's maybe like medium speed money, meaning like I invest in something and it cash flows a little bit less than maybe the fast money would, but you're going to get more appreciation and more tax savings. And then slow money is things that take a lot of time, many years to build up cash, but it's more of an appreciation and tax savings play. So what I love about what you're doing, and I want our listeners to hear this, is like you're not just focused on I'm gonna build up a really cool badass like co-hosting company. Like you're focused on like I'm going to actually grow a business and invest and diversify across multiple. I keep wanting to go to say asset classes. Not really. It's all within the short-term rental industry, but you're doing it from different angles. And
Yep.
so one question for me that I know some of the listeners are listening to is, I mean, how do you take the bandwidth to be able to do that?
Yeah. So who, not how, right? So building the right team is super important, and it's hiring up. I mean, one of the things I hear a lot of people do is they hire the cheapest VAs that they can possibly find, build
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest team that they can possibly find. It's like, okay, it's like that's fine, and there's a lot of tasks that can be handled in that approach. But you're going to be micromanaging that task. You're going to be micromanaging that approach if you build a team of just team members. But I hire up. I want to find people that have more experience, that come in and teach me. So one of my practices with hiring a VA, for instance, is first off, it's an experience and core values match. So core values are what they match our core values. They have more experience, or at least as much experience as we need them to. Then, as I bring them in, I interview them, and part of the interview is I leave them at the end of interview one with a homework assignment, and they have to come back to me in homework two and present their answers. And it's like, take a look at this. Here's one of my listings, or here's something. And what would you do differently? How would you do it? What would you do better? How would you price this? What would you market this as? How would you? So I want to see like what expertise are they bringing to us. And so I hire up. I hire people that come to me, and I'm like, yep, I did not think of that. I did not think of that. I did not think of that. Right. So it's now they don't need me to train them. They have everything they need. And I know I'm not the micromanager leader. I don't ever want to be that. But now that our team is getting bigger, and we were at, between my properties and our third party management, we we're at about 28 listings. And I think it was 28 was the number. So now that I acquired this company, and brought the owner of that company in as my partner in our merged entity, I'm good. She's going to play the integrator role, and I get to stay in my lane and play the visionary role, right? So capacity is for sure a thing that you have to be aware of, and what do you have capacity for? Because if you just think you can do it all, I mean, the truth is you're going to fill up, and something's going to fall short of your expectations, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's the pricing, whether it's the marketing, whether it's the guest service, whatever it might be. And I know I was bursting at the seams, and so was she before I acquired her company. And so putting us together and getting us aligned with our strengths it's going to be really well for both of us.
I love that. I love that. It's something to aspire to. Like as we grow, we start to partner and work more with individuals. I mean, end of last year, so over a year ago, I was thinking to myself, like, how can I continue with this like hand holding people, but like take on more people? It's not sustainable for myself. Like everybody, oh, we all want to work with Kenny, but I'm like, how can they work with like my brand rather than just like me individually and still accomplish the same goals? And it's finding the right individuals who I can like essentially like I treat them as like partners. They're contractors essentially. They're not employees. I'm working with people who have experience in what I do and I can teach them and they're, teachable. And then they can go and apply it and help people and they have experience to be able to in real estate to know how to help and find deals. And so anyway, that's really helped me grow because now I've got three of them and I can take on clients, and I don't have to, I wouldn't say deal with them, but like they handle them on the day to day, and I can like check in with them, and because that's really all I have time for. I'm focused on growth, right? And I think that's like something to aspire to. But with that being said, most of our listeners only have a few properties with short-term rentals.
Mhm.
So I do like I do encourage people to, especially when they're starting out, obviously beyond the software, but using VAs or using resources and stuff. So what are your recommendations for that person who's got a few properties but wanting to kind of offload some of these things because they're still working their W-2 or they want to spend time with their family?
In those scenarios, those are where those, the kind of entry level VA positions can really help you, right?
Mhm.
Administrative tasks. I remember when I first started my first three properties, you know, you technically don't need a VA. Like if you're putting enough time into this, you can manage a couple properties on your own. But I brought on a VA from day one, and her role was get the rental agreement signed, make sure that door lock codes are given, make sure that gets communicated with, here, for the very basic stuff, make sure that reconcile that housekeeping schedules were all up to date, just things that you wanted to make sure that you perfected early on, especially. Those kinds of things, absolutely, you can bring in an entry level VA, and I think that's a great strategy for that.
I want to take it back to our topic, which is about like understanding, that like you and I kind of talked about at the beginning in a more simple sense, not we wouldn't say macro, micro, but more of like focusing on you. So let's bring it back there. What did you mean by that?
Here's the thing: when you get into the space, there are so many ways to do short-term rentals,
Yep.
right? There's luxury, there's marketplace, there's single units, there's big homes, there's co-hosting, there's property management, there's ownership, there's all these different things. And the more you study all these different things, the more I find people just get confused and shiny object syndrome, right? Like, I want to
Mm,
try it that way. Oh, look at that. I want to try that. Oh, look at that. I want to try that. And it's like, wait a minute. What's your why? Like, why are you doing this? What's your goals? Like, where do you see yourself in 3 years and 5 years? And the problem is most people are operating in a go forward basis. And I always say that's going to take you way longer. You're going to do okay, probably, but the right way to do it is start with the end in mind and reverse engineer that. So
mm,
start with your goals and your why, and then get laser focused, get tunnel vision on exactly doing what you want to do. Don't worry about what that guy did. Don't worry about that one influencer and Instagram university and all these other things. You told me this is exactly what you wanted. So reverse engineer that. And what's it going to take? If this is what you want in 5 years, and what do you got to be doing in 4 years? What do you got to be doing in 3 years, 2 years, 1 year? And then break that down into smaller increments of time to start forcing the daily habits that get you to your goal. But if you just do things, if you're just operating on a "I'll take it as it comes" mode, then quite frankly, you're just going to run around in circles, and it's going to take you way too long and potentially cost you way too much money, and maybe not even ever make money if you just don't know where you're going. Make sure you stay true to your values and your why, and make sure that that's the topic of your, that's the theme and the vision of your company and where you guys are driving.
yeah. No, I really like that. I think I see a lot of people going back to the whole YouTube University thing. I see a lot of people do that now, which is awesome and something I did to get started and get comfortable and confident. But they tend to adopt whatever the influencer or guru says on the videos that you should be doing or be able to do or whatever. And it tends to be something, a generic goal, and mentally it might sound super easy to obtain that particular goal, or not, maybe not super easy, but it sounds, the way they make it sound is like, oh, well, that's very doable. That's very like, I can do that too. I can latch on to that and I can try to accomplish the exact same thing that that person accomplished. But the problem with that thinking is that, in my opinion, the problem with that thinking is it doesn't actually reflect your why. And there is a very, very strong likelihood you won't achieve that because it's not motivated by the right reasons.
Yep. Yep. 100%. That's
And
exactly.
And so, like, when you mention like being laser focused, I love that because people need to be laser focused on their why, not someone else's why and how they accomplish that why. it's awesome and motivating to hear successes in this industry. But one reason why I don't go around teaching people exactly how I got to where I got with my portfolio is because they cannot replicate it. They can't do it. And it's not
Yeah.
because, whoa, Kenny, he's got the data and the skills and all that, the ability. It's not that at all. It's the times and the markets have shifted, like how I got started with zero capital in and did all these like certain things. You literally, like, very few people could try to do that where they're at and how they did it. I really got lucky, and timing wise, like I took advantage of the timing. But people can like have that same success, but they have to do it their own way, like blaze their own path, and it
Yep.
has to be motivated by their own goals. What say you? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think when I first started this, it was all about ownership, right? Like there was no third party management. There was not the first 3 years that we were doing this. It was all 100% all about ownership. I was laser focused on tax depreciation. I was laser focused on building asset wealth.
Mm,
And cash flow was, again, knock on wood. My wife had built a beautiful law practice, so cash flow was just not an issue for us. And we got 3 years into this, and I said, okay, it's all great and that's all working, but I do want a cash flow vertical tied to my real estate business. So that's why I evolved. I pivot, I just added on another vertical. I haven't stopped what I'm doing. We're building a new one as we speak in Phoenix, right? So I think it's just really important to stay true to that. Look, when I said Instagram University, you're right. I mean, there are so many things you can learn from that, right? And
mm,
I don't dissuade anybody from going to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm an avid masterminder. I have a finance mentor. I have a strategy CEO strategy mentor. I have a fitness mentor. I believe in mentorships, right? So did Michael Jordan. So did Kobe Bryant. So did anybody that's ever done anything meaningful had people that pushed them, whether it was to teach them or challenge them or whatever, and help them grow. So definitely go seek information, go seek education, but align it and reconcile it with your goals is all I mean by that, right? I mean, I'll give you one very simple thing. If you go to, if you just like learning what, STR 101, the first thing everybody tells you is integrate, get a PMS, use dynamic pricing, do all that. And then I'm like, whoa, no, you're not. Until I had my 10th listing, I didn't have a property management software. I didn't have dynamic pricing. I didn't integrate. I didn't do any of that. And we are always in the top 4 pages of search results because of that, because we were always in the listings. We were always, the algorithm loved us in the way that we operated our listings, right? So don't integrate. Don't stop giving away your revenue. Stop doing all of those things. You only have a few properties, a handful of properties, takes one VA. And yes, it's a different banner on your messages, right? So instead of just getting a host away banner, now you're going to get either an Airbnb one or a VRBO one or whatever the booking channel might be. Who cares? It's just a different banner. It doesn't all have to be on one platform when you're just handling a handful of listings. So that's my first one to tell you, like, stay true to you, right? Forget what they taught you and remember what you want to do.
yeah, yeah. There's no easy button to do this. I think there's like there's a lot of cool software. It's funny you say that. Like I did an episode with, I don't know if you know Cody Wood. He does like fractional COO services. He's helped property management companies grow from an operation side. He's like the guy that does, in these businesses. He's not a visionary, he's a doer. Very rare breed. And anyway, he came in and he was like, he said exactly what you just said. You don't need all these softwares. You don't need all these shiny objects, that these easy buttons. It amazes me. When I went to the STR WealthCon last year, there was like, I swear, I don't know, there's like 30 different vendors there, and like 20 of them are selling some sort of software, you know? And it's like, they're all like different versions of themselves, but people are like, oh, I need to subscribe to this, I need to subscribe to that, and I need to subscribe to that. And it's like, that crap adds up. And for those of you who like have a property or two, like, there goes your cash flow in subscription services to things that you probably really don't need subscription services to. You know what
Yep.
I mean? And
Yep.
you're
Absolutely.
not going to be like, you can't be a master of all. If you're trying to do too much, you're a master of none. And it's like, understand and like figure out the mechanics of it, and then as you grow, start to integrate some of the things. But once again, I mean, it's a while before you really need all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt.
Focusing on you, and so how with Scottsdale and, other, and even the co-hosting and just finding properties and doing what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of distractions out there, not just from a software standpoint, but the market. People are like really negative recently on the Airbnb industry. I get the question all the time, oh, well, is this viable? Is this a long-term play? How do you see this going?
A friend of mine just sent me a reel yesterday by Pace Morby. Pace Morby put out this thing, and I said, first off, when a big time influencer like Pace Morby puts something out, you have to understand there's always going to be some sort of underlying selfishness to that reel. Like, what message is he trying to breed? Whose Airbnbs is he trying to buy on subject to, right? Like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, right? But, well, I mean, here's what I say. Airbnb is like the Uber to taxis, right? It's just a new platform, but vacation rentals have been here for decades upon decades. That's never going to change. There are going to be markets that are going to start putting boundaries and bumper lanes and start saying, wait a minute, we don't want this in these districts. It's got to go into this zone over here where we've got industrial, then you can have STR, then you can have residential, right? But we don't want it in residentials anymore. All that. Definitely stay away from blue states. Blue states, are very, it's not a political statement. I don't care which side of the aisle you vote on. And today's election day.
I know today's election day. Oh,
I don't give a damn. For real, I don't. But blue states are generally tenant friendly, right? So stay away from that. Be in a place that is landlord friendly. It's owner friendly. It supports how you want to use your property that you bought. And the reason we sold our California property is exactly that. We're in a blue state that got really hard on regulation and ordinances in our market, and you don't get grandfathered in a place like that. So we sold it. We just said, fine, we'll just move our money out elsewhere, right? So bringing that back, where do I think? I mean, I think, again, vacation rentals have been around for decades, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I truly don't. I mean, people always will need a place to stay. People are always going to be tourists. Just find the markets that have very, very mature regulation, right? You and I have had this conversation before. I've had people entering this industry and they say, well, look at that market. That market doesn't have any regulation. Be a great place to start. I'm like, no, it wouldn't, because when they do have regulation, what if it's not good for you? Then it impacts the value of your asset that you bought. You can no longer sell that to an investor. You can only sell that to a residential owner moving forward. And guess what? That's going to impact how much you can sell it for. So, get into places that have very mature ordinances, very mature regulation, but also check out their city council meetings. Make sure it's not a hot topic on any of their most recent handful of meetings. Make sure it's not on their agenda. Make sure it's not on their radar. It's not an active conversation. Now you're in a community that has mature regulation, no conversation about this. So they're supportive of it. It's good. Everything is good. Go ahead and focus on buying in that market, right? But that's my overall opinion on the short-term rental market.
Yeah, for sure. I think it underlines, I talk about this a lot. So I'm not going to elaborate too much, but this like maturing of the industry, right? So as there's more regulation, as there's more supply in the market, and competition, really what ends up happening is you get an establishment of an asset class, a real asset class that's here to stay. And to share a story here, not to take over this thing, but I think it's really relevant. I mean, this is very fresh to me. Is my Buffalo property just got shut down. I got a cease and desist on the door.
No way.
Yeah, completely shut down. And this is one of the first properties I ever bought in Buffalo, the Airbnb. 6 years, just axe dead. And it's insane. The city, a couple, so they passed some regulations in 2019. They weren't too bad. And then recently, the city council got together at the beginning of the year, and they said no more owner occupied if you don't live in the county, and like some other stupid rules too. And I have a triplex, and they wouldn't allow triplexes, anything above 3 units, which doesn't make any sense. But they didn't counsel. They refused to counsel with hosts. They did it like, indoors, private, and then they made these rules and just passed it. And then all of a sudden it's just boom, you start getting notices like, hey, you can't STR anymore. And then a cease and desist, and you get a $1,500 fine per day that you STR, like all this crazy stuff. And so I had to call Airbnb yesterday, and I canceled on every single one of my guests I have 2 units I was renting out. I canceled on every single one of them because I had to, and I gave them the documentation. And thank goodness it might be penalized. I mean, it's nothing I can do about it, and Airbnb understands. But all of a sudden, all these guests are like, "Hey, what do we do? Where do we stay?" And I'm just like they just did that for the entire city, and there was no regulation before. To your point, like it was very loose, and we live in a blue state, and it's not very landlord friendly, and so it's like there was something in coming down, and luckily a couple of years ago I could see that happening. Some of the decisions, some of the things are coming, and so I pulled out of the other properties, and this one was kind of just like cash flowing, cranking out, and I've got appreciation. I mean, I got it in 2018, so I can sell it. I can long term rent. It's going to make money. I'm not really worried about it, but it just sucks. It's like an end of an era, of how I got started. But it ultimately came down to I wasn't in an established vacation market. Hence why I've been diversifying and buying in different areas across the country now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll take this and I'll put real numbers behind this whole example and this whole story for you, right? So I bought the one in Huntington Beach in November of 2021. We booked it for we had it booked. It was cash flowing really nicely, by the way. I mean, it was really good market. If you can get into Huntington Beach and do it right, great market to short-term rent. So we were 9 months in May of 2022. I get an offer, just an off-market offer. Somebody called my agent and came to me. It was a 1031 investor. So this guy, for those who aren't familiar with 1031s, 1031 exchange is you sell a piece of property and you're going to have a big capital gains or a capital gain. Instead of paying the capital gain, you can reinvest that money into a property that's of equal value at what you just sold or higher.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you're basically kicking the tax liability down the curb. So, but you only have so much time to identify a property that you're going to buy. Otherwise, you lose the benefit. So we get this offer off market from some Asian investor that's got this huge capital gain, and he's got 10 days left to identify and get something under contract. So we bought it at 1.776,776,000. This guy comes in at 2.4 million. We only appraised at 2.3, but he didn't care. He had to get the number 2.4, had to be the number for him. So he went and he basically told his agent, said, listen, we got 10 days left. Go find an investment property near the ocean, somewhere where I know my money will just always appreciate and be protected, and just buy it. So he came, made an offer to us, and this was in May of 22, and I had about $150,000 in booking between June 1st and August 31st. We had really good bookings. So I'm like, I don't want to turn that away. That's really good. I'm still fresh in this. I'm only 9 months old at this point. So I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but I also don't want to turn down an opportunity to sell this house for $700K gain. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So I started listening. It was $600K. So started so we started going through the numbers, and I said to the guy, I said, listen, I'll turn it over to you and I'll manage it for free, but I want 50% of the booking revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll manage it for free. I won't charge you anything. You're not in this to Airbnb it. I'll keep all the bookings in there. You get half, I get half. And he said no. So I said, fine, you get to keep all the revenue, but I'm not giving you the furniture. The furniture comes out and I'm going to go sell the furniture. And he said no. So I kind of got stubborn. I got irritated. Big mistake on my end. I'm like, I'm not negotiating with this guy. He's not going to negotiate. I'm not going to negotiate either. So I said no. I pulled out of the deal. Said I'm going to get all this cash flow that's going to come in the next 90 days. And we'll just kind of keep making money here. Well, then 7 months later, the ordinance changes. And they say that kind of home, we had an attached garage. So Huntington Beach basically changes their ordinance to say if you the only way you can have a short-term rental is if you have an ADU now and somebody occupying the ADU or the home. So my house, I lose my permit. I can no longer operate there. And so I go to sell this thing, but guess what? I can't sell it to an investor anymore because it no longer can be permitted. So my best offer was 2.1. So I lost $300K because I was stubborn. Now, I still made money in the deal and the sale and all that, right? So knock on wood, this is not a sob story, but could have been a much nicer deal had I not been irritated. And this is why, again, coming back to be a real estate investor first. When you know that you can make $700K on a property, bird in the hand. right?
Yeah,
Like that.
or what's really funny is we were helping a client in another beach market, and the I'm going to say some different numbers that are similar, but I just don't. They might listen. So they the it was listed at like 1.55, and they came in at 1.4, and then negotiations start happening where it's like, okay, well, we'll give it to you for 1.5, and they're like, well, 1.45, and then they're like 1.4 set that they go down to 1.49 and 1.475, and then there's like this dead stop standstill, and it came down to $5,000, not $5,000 that the buyer was going to have to put out of their pocket, but on the total price of the property. And so like everybody's scrambling and trying to figure out, well, how, like, and the buyer's like, I'm not like, we're gonna get it at this price. It was like 1.47, and there was no logic behind it. It was just it was like pride. You know what I mean? Like in negotiations.
Yeah, I
And
do.
I'm like showing them the numbers. I'm like, look, even at this, it's like I was like, change it to 1.5. Change it to 1 point. And it's like the numbers didn't even change. Like the cash on cash, the cash flow, like nothing changed whatsoever. I was like, it doesn't matter. It's a win. Just walk away. Like you didn't get it for what they originally were asking. You got it for much less. Like that is a win in of itself. And there are the numbers. Like you can't argue with the numbers, but people get so caught up in this, like what you mentioned, like the pride of the negotiations. I have to win, on both sides. And it's like, if you're doing your numbers right, like let that guide you and let that be the determination, not like what your heart and your emotions say, like, I have to win over this other person in this deal kind of thing,
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
I
For
appreciate
sure.
you sharing that story though. That's really, really interesting. A good lesson for a lot of people here. Cause I
No
see it a
doubt.
lot. I see it a lot. Or this thing is broken, or I had somebody like they had a pool issue and it was a $5,000, $5,000 fix or 8,000 or something like that. And I was like, you're about to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars that you have cash in design and decor, but you're not going to pay $5,000 because the seller won't fix the thing with the pool. I was like, sure, I would want them to do it, but they're telling you no, and you're going to walk out on this amazing deal for $5,000. Like literally talk them off a ledge, and they're cash flowing. They're super happy now, and it's like something in the past, but they were really like caught up in that amount, And
Yep.
it's like, be a real estate investor, which involves focusing on the numbers. Let the numbers make the decisions for you. And if there is an emotional side, that's fine. But if you're doing this as an investment, the numbers really need to go first and be the priority.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally
Anyway,
agree.
as we kind of wrap up here, couple questions for you. So number one, as an experienced host and someone who's got a large portfolio now, we want to hear, I mean, it could be multiple tips. I don't care. What's one way or multiple ways that you recommend people that they can cash flow positive with their short-term rentals?
Yeah. So, on the real estate side, it's the Burr model, right? So the Burr model is buy, rehab, refinance, rent it, right? So you buy it, you rehab it, you create more equity in the property, and then you refinance it on the back end. You pull all of your money back out, and now you rent it out. So even if this thing just breaks even, you've got your money. The velocity of your money is really fast because you got your money out of the deal. This thing is breaking even, and it's paying for itself. Your money gets to go work on the next deal. So
Yeah.
that's way one. That's on the real estate side. On the short term rental side, I mean, don't ignore the data. I mean, don't ignore the data, right? Like you've got a guy like Kenny Bedwell right here, STR Insights. There's plenty of tools out there to use, but use the data, and that's really really important. And understand where you can cash flow, but don't make the mistake I made where you only focus for 3 years on ownership,
Mm.
because ownership is an amazing way to build the wealth long term. But I had this brand that I built, and I think it was more well received than I realized. And I had so many people coming to me all the time. Will you manage my property? Will you manage my property? Will you manage my property? And I always kept saying no because so focused on the which is funny because we've spent this whole episode talking about focus, and I'm telling you not to focus. But so focused on ownership,
Yeah.
where the mistake I made was thinking that third party management was going to derail my focus, whereas it wasn't. It was the same thing. I already built the infrastructure, just fill in my capacity with other people's properties, and that's a cash flow injection right into your business. So once you get really good at what you're doing, go share that with the world and go tell everybody about it and manage your properties for them and get your cash flow up right away. Those would be my two best tips right away for somebody.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of people who need help, who need, and that's we'll talk about those after we end the episode. Who need like just don't have the confidence getting in and managing, and they're afraid. And I think a lot
Right.
of people who are getting into this, and especially if you don't have a lot of capital, like you can own your market, be the go-to person in your market and talk about your market, and people will come to you and ask you questions, and you'll be seen as like the go-to person. That's how you build a good co-hosting business, is being the person that everyone goes, oh well, they know the Scottsdale market, or they know the Huntington Beach market, or whatever, and they're the go-to. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really good advice, so thank you for
So
sharing that.
I would say, and to that point, I would say, don't be afraid to hire a consultant or a coach or a mentor, whatever word you
Yeah,
want to call them, right? Like I do it. I help a lot of people. I come out of the consulting world in DNA. That's a shameless plug, but it doesn't have to be me. There are plenty of them out there. Like, don't be afraid to align yourself with somebody that can show you not just their wins, but also like, here's what I've learned along the way, and here are the mistakes that I've made.
yeah, no, I love that. I love that a lot. Well, sweet man. So, on that note, if someone is interested in speaking to you more and learning more about your business, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you, to have a call, or just chat or whatever?
Yep, absolutely. So if you go right into my Airbnb, which is Fuad underscore Airbnb, my Instagram,
Your
Fuad,
Instagram.
Fuad
Okay.
underscore Airbnb. Click the link in my bio, schedule some time with me. We'll jump on a quick video call. We'll see if I'm the right fit for you, if you're the right fit for me, and if I can help at all. That's what I love to do.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, man. So, for those of you listening, or obviously if you're watching, you can see it here. But those of you listening, driving your car, it's on Instagram at Fouad underscore Airbnb. You can reach out to him there if you're interested in learning more. And he's got some good content on there too. So give him a follow. So, well, Fouad, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This was really good. Good to connect again. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of Cashflow Positive. And we'll see you next week.